Good morning and welcome back to my channel. And I just realized I haven't spoke about this. It just dawned on me. We all probably know that one person that just drinks themselves to numb themselves and acts like everything's okay. Could be alcohol, could be just something, right? They numb themselves. It's pretty obvious to us, but they think that they're doing a really good job of hiding some deeper unhappiness, right? Everything looks good and happy on the outside, but it just doesn't make sense that they drink so heavily or numb themselves with something so heavily, right? So think of that person and then just think for a second. Can they even admit that they're unhappy? Can you admit when you're unhappy? And understanding the strength that can take sometimes when we're so used to pretending. It can be a lot, and that can be kind of difficult. But really, change can only occur if we can admit that a change needs to happen in the first place. And if we're just so used to numbing and avoiding our human emotions, the ones that, yes, we typically claim as negative, guess what? They really just become more intense. Haven't you noticed that? They don't just go away, right? That's why that person has to continuously do it. Otherwise, we'd be able to numb ourselves out one or two times with a couple nights out of drinking and it would go away. But that typically isn't the case. We typically have to keep doing it, right? So maybe, someone drinks themselves to sleep every night, and then they act fine, and then they're truly emotionally drained and feeling neglected on the inside. And truly, it's like almost a cry out for help, in my opinion. They just don't know how to ask for it. And maybe this is you. Maybe you can relate to this if you're honest with yourself, that you struggle with it. Maybe you struggle just with communicating your feelings, and then you wonder why you don't feel supported by the people around you, the people that you're closest to. If you stop and think, there's probably a connection. Are you being open and vulnerable and honest with your current situation and life, right? Can you identify a factor in your life that you might tend to avoid? And can you admit when you're unhappy? And it allows us sometimes to have a little bit of compassion for people when we realize that we struggle in areas too, and when we actually finally notice how hard it really is for us to make changes. We can have some of that understanding and compassion for other people and more understanding. Otherwise, we get just more frustrated, right? Because we can see that they aren't opening up, or we can see that there's a bigger issue and that they don't want to address. But I think, it's human nature to want to go towards pleasure and away from pain, right? So it's really just a habit of always trying to go towards pleasure. Sometimes we just don't realize that the short-term pleasure really doesn't help us that much, because it just comes back, and we keep numbing these emotions just for them to come back up, instead of just really taking the time to first just admit that there's an unhappiness, that there's something that's causing an unhappiness. And if you aren't ready to be vulnerable with someone else, maybe that means just starting to consider the idea that you may be unhappy and consider it to yourself, right? Just begin admitting maybe a change needs to be made to ourselves. And just practice changing that habit of immediately turning to something superficial, a quick fix, something to numb out, and allow yourself to just begin to feel a little bit of what that unhappiness is, and it doesn't persist as much. When we allow ourselves to just acknowledge it, those persistent emotions, they slow down a little bit because we're paying attention to them, right? And then we can just slowly start to break the habit, and then you begin to feel less out of control emotionally, mentally, because you're starting to just take control back and understand what your body's trying to tell you. They're not meant to make you feel this terrible way, but the more we ignore them, the more they push, right? The more they want to make themselves known, and then it just starts this vicious cycle where we just keep trying to numb them, but then they come back because we're not really dealing with it, right? So it goes back to what I said before. If you think about it, what is it really helping? Because it just keeps coming back. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to keep avoiding with whatever method it is that we use. Maybe it's impulse shopping or food or whatever we turn to, instead of just allowing ourselves to feel this. So really, with all of the changes that we talk about, really it starts with even just admitting that you might be unhappy, or talking to someone that you care about, and that, really asking them to get vulnerable with you. Maybe that could help them, especially if it's someone close to you, right? And just really having the open, adult, meaningful conversation, right? Creating more connections with people in our lives really makes us feel more happy and whole, and that's really what life is about, in my opinion. It's really about connecting more with people, having the experiences, feeling all of the emotions, even the unpleasant ones, and then figuring out what we learn from them, figuring out how to just feel more of what we want to feel, but allowing all of the emotions, and being able to just be our best friend and admit when there needs to be a change. And isn't it more helpful to start looking for a solution versus just avoiding it? The problem isn't going to go away, and that you could apply that to most aspects in life. I mean, how many times do you keep ignoring a problem and it just goes away on its own? I mean, maybe sometimes, but usually we have to just stop procrastinating it and just address it. So that's my challenge for you this week, is just start challenging yourself a little bit to acknowledge more of the certain things that might make you unhappy, or allow yourself to just feel a little bit more of those negative emotions and not instantly turn to something to shut them off or avoid them, because they're probably going to come back. So just start small and allow yourself to feel them. Allow yourself to trust someone to open up to, get it off of your chest a little bit. It can work wonders. Okay. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you get something from this. Share it with someone if it can help them, and I'll see you guys next time.